Listen to me very closely, because you aren't here by some random stroke of luck or idle curiosity. You are here because there is a persistent ache in your spirit, a heavy feeling in a place you never thought would hurt, your own home and family. Lately, you've noticed a growing distance between you and those you've known your whole life, and it has left you feeling deeply unsettled and perhaps even a bit ashamed. You are struggling with a strange mix of grief and a secret sense of relief that you can't quite explain to anyone else. It's a confusing place to be, stuck between the love you feel for your kin and the exhaustion you feel in their presence. You have probably spent many sleepless nights asking yourself the kind of questions that feel like personal betrayals. Why does the air in the room feel so much heavier the moment they walk in? Why is it that you only seem to find your breath and your inner peace when they finally step away or leave the house? Most importantly, why do you feel like a bad person for enjoying that silence and that space? I want you to take a deep breath and let my words land right where they need to. God does not move people out of your life randomly, and He certainly does not create distance within a family by mistake or accident. What you are currently interpreting as a painful loss might actually be a display of divine precision in your life. What feels like a cold abandonment or a sudden rift is often just divine timing unfolding without asking for your permission first. There is a truth about the spiritual journey that most people are never told because it sounds too harsh, but you need to hear it now. God hears the private conversations about you that you were never invited to. He sees the hidden intentions that never reached your ears. And He recognizes the seeds of resistance forming in the hearts of those you once trusted completely. As your calling begins to expand and your inner light starts to sharpen, the reality is that not everyone around you is equipped to handle that shift. When you move into a higher alignment with your purpose, the people who are comfortable in the old version of you will start to feel a friction they can't explain. If you find yourself feeling emotionally drained, mentally anxious, or spiritually weighed down after every single interaction with certain relatives, this message is for you. It isn't meant to help you accuse them or to make your heart go cold. It is meant to help you finally understand the spiritual mechanics of what is happening. I want you to stay with me until the very end of this message, because what you're about to hear will completely reframe how you see this separation. You are going to discover why distance is often the highest form of protection, and why silence can actually be an act of profound mercy from the Creator. This season of your life is revealing the true weight of the assignment you carry on your shoulders. Before we dive deeper into the why behind the pain, take a moment to acknowledge this shift. Like this video, subscribe to join this community of seekers and comment 99 below to show you are ready. The number 99 isn't just a digit. It is a spiritual marker for those who are being guarded and set apart, while others are being moved away from their circle. It serves as a sign that says, I trust the divine process even when it hurts my heart. Now, let's talk about why this pain started in the first place, because there is a specific moment most chosen ones remember vividly. It usually begins with a very simple, honest prayer whispered in a moment of total exhaustion. You didn't ask for a miracle or a mountain of gold. You simply closed your eyes and said, God, I just want peace. Here is where almost everyone misinterprets how the universe responds to that specific request for tranquility. God rarely answers a prayer for peace by miraculously changing the personalities or behaviors of the people who are stressing you out. Instead, He usually answers it by changing their level of access to your life and your energy. True peace isn't produced by winning an argument or convincing someone to treat you better. It is produced by removing the elements that constantly disturb your internal alignment. This is why the shift in your family dynamic often feels so sudden and jarring. One day, everything feels familiar, even if it's a bit dysfunctional or painful in a way you've grown used to. But the next day, something feels fundamentally off, and you can't put your finger on it. The conversations become shorter. The invitations to hang out start to dry up. and the emotional thread that held you together begins to fray without any clear explanation. You're left standing in the rubble of a relationship, wondering what you did wrong and replaying every moment to find your mistake. But I want you to consider a new possibility. What if absolutely nothing went wrong on your end? What if God chose not to correct them because He was busy correcting the environment that surrounds your soul? Many times, family members don't make a conscious, villainous decision to oppose your personal growth. Their resistance is much more subtle than that, which is why it's so confusing to deal with. It doesn't look like outward hatred. Instead, it disguises itself as genuine concern, or jokes that have a bit too much of a sharp edge to them. It looks like reasonable advice that consistently encourages you to play it safe and stay small rather than stepping into your greatness. They might say things like, "You're changing," or "Don't get your hopes too high," or "You're doing too much lately." On the surface, these words don't sound violent or aggressive, but spiritually they act like a weight that slowly compresses your spirit until you can't breathe. What they are feeling, even if they lack the words to describe it, is a sense of disruption. Your elevation changes the family hierarchy they have relied on for decades. Your new clarity challenges the toxic patterns they've lived inside of for years. And your discipline exposes the comforts they are too afraid to let go of. Instead of facing their own discomfort, something deep within them pushes back against your progress. It's not a loud or aggressive push, but it is persistent and draining. God sees this internal friction long before you are willing to admit it to yourself. He notices how every phone call or dinner costs you a week's worth of emotional energy. He sees your peace eroding and your intuition tightening up in rooms that used to feel like a safe harbor. When He decides to intervene for your sake, He doesn't always send a warning or a countdown. He acts with a silent, firm hand. This distance usually begins quite quietly, without any big blowouts or dramatic betrayals. It's just a gradual loosening of the ties and a subtle sense of detachment that grows over time. Then, something very unexpected happens inside of your chest. You start to feel lighter. You might not feel happy, in a celebratory sense, but you feel a profound, quiet calm. It might even feel inappropriate to be this calm given the circumstances, but that feeling isn't numbness. It is confirmation. It is your nervous system finally entering a state of rest because the source of the static has been moved. Of course, the guilt usually follows right on the heels of that peace. You start to think, what is wrong with me that I feel better when my own family isn't around? The answer is simple. Peace recognizes peace. Your spirit knows exactly when a heavy pressure has been lifted, even if your logical mind hasn't caught up to the reality yet. God does not wait for a situation to become completely unbearable before He steps in to help. He moves early and precisely. Because He moves so quietly, most people miss the divine hand at work, but you felt the shift because you are tuned in. What you are experiencing right now is not a rejection by your family. It is a strategic repositioning by the Creator. But I have to tell you, this is where it gets even more unsettling for most people. The silence you are currently navigating isn't the end of the story. It's just the first sign that a much deeper movement is in play. This isn't just a disagreement or a simple misunderstanding that can be talked through over a cup of coffee. It is something far more dangerous if you misinterpret it as a personal failure. This is about spiritual friction, and it's a sign of your progress. Friction naturally occurs when two things move in opposite directions while trying to occupy the exact same space. Your growth is movement, and your discipline and obedience are forms of spiritual motion. When you begin to move forward, everything in your immediate environment that refuses to change will begin to resist you. It's not because you attacked them, but because your very existence and your movement expose their stagnation. Your faith makes people uncomfortable not because they hate your beliefs, but because your consistency forces them to look in a mirror they never asked for. When people criticize you for acting different, or thinking you're better. They aren't making objective observations about your character. They are having a pressure response to the internal conflict your growth creates within them. It is absolutely crucial that you understand this. If you take their criticism personally, you will step into a war you were never meant to fight. You'll waste your time explaining, defending, and shrinking yourself just to make them feel comfortable again. The moment you do that, your alignment fractures. God moves people out of the way to prevent that fracture from happening. This is protection, not a punishment for you or for them. If God waited until the betrayal was obvious or until the words turned into open hostility, the wound to your soul would already be too deep to easily heal. Instead, He intervenes early by reducing proximity and disrupting their influence before it can pull you off your path. The hard part is that you don't get a file of evidence to prove you were right to move on. You only get distance. This is why it's so easy to second, guess yourself and wonder if you're just being dramatic. But God doesn't operate based on your need for an explanation. The battle was never meant to be visible because it was never meant to be yours to fight in the first place. The moment you stop seeing family criticism as a personal attack and start seeing it as spiritual pressure, your entire perspective will shift. You'll realize you weren't being targeted, you were being tested for resilience. The universe was checking to see if you would trade your divine alignment for temporary human acceptance. Many people fail this test because they try to win the argument instead of preserving their clarity. They stay in draining rooms because they think leaving is mean. God isn't interested in who feels comfortable. He is interested in who remains aligned with their purpose. Alignment cannot survive constant friction without eventually breaking down. So, He creates separation not as a dramatic exit, but as a strategic withdrawal for your own safety. Right now, you are standing at the edge of a powerful realization that most people never grasp. What feels like a loss of connection is actually the creation of insulation. The people being moved away aren't necessarily your enemies, but they were never meant to walk where you are going next. There is a principle in nature called pruning, and it is the ultimate act of intelligence, not destruction. A gardener doesn't cut a branch because he hates the tree. He cuts it because he sees that the branch is becoming too heavy and is draining the life from the rest of the plant. This is exactly what is happening in your life right now. Divine pruning always starts with a feeling of separation, and that separation always feels like a loss before it reveals itself as a necessary preparation. God is teaching you exactly where your true strength comes from by removing your emotional dependencies. Many chosen ones don't realize how much energy they were sucking from people instead of drawing from the source until those people are gone. Familiarity often replaces faith, and we start to look for validation from humans rather than from our calling. When you try to chase people during this phase, it becomes incredibly costly to your spirit. Every desperate text or attempt to fix things prematurely only delays the fruit you are supposed to grow. You think you're healing a wound, but you're actually reopening a cut that was meant to heal. When peace disappears, it's a signal that someone is sitting in a seat that belongs to God. Letting go in this season is not an act of bitterness or holding a grudge. It is an act of supreme trust. You are trusting that God knows what you cannot see from your current vantage point. You are trusting that subtraction is actually room being made for something much greater. The silence you are learning to live with is training you to listen to a different, higher frequency. Once the pruning is complete, your growth will accelerate in ways that will shock you. But remember, the pruning must be finished. If you are still gripping onto the past, the process isn't over, and what comes next requires total surrender. You are not being abandoned by your family or by the divine. You are being preserved for a specific future. Preservation rarely feels gentle while it's happening, but it always looks precise when you look back at it in hindsight. Right now, your restraint is your greatest shield, and your silence is your strongest alignment. You were never rejected by those who left. You were simply chosen for something they couldn't see. Walk forward with authority, knowing that nothing God removes was ever meant to go where you are headed. You are exactly where you need to be,